We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you. Hello, hello. Welcome to I Be Determined. I'm your host, Michelle Harvey.
And I'm also the host. I'm Mason Harvey.
Today, we're going to be discussing two questions that we both get asked a lot, and we also see other people getting asked a lot. So we think these are important. So the first question is,
what is it like to be a child living with an incurable disease like Crohn's disease? And what is it like to be the parent and the caregiver of a child with an incurable disease?
Right. So we'll be able to give you a perspective from both the patient and the caregiver and parent in my case. So with not all caregivers are parents. Yeah. So you can listen to this even if you are a friend of somebody with a disease, a family member. It can only help you better understand the person and maybe understand your own feelings, what you're feeling in all of it too. And I think it's important to first of all mention too that this is really personal information. And a lot of kids aren't willing to talk about their diagnosis. And some parents, I don't know how much they share, but
about it.
Yeah, we've always involved from the very beginning. We had the doctor include Mason. Mm-hmm. Whether, I don't know if that was always, exciting for you. Yeah. But my thought was I would rather be honest upfront and have him know there's no secrets. There's nothing hidden around the corner. We didn't tell him about something. So I thought it would also only help him as he got older to be an advocate for his own health and truly understand what was happening to his body. So thank you, Mason, for sharing. And
we want to spread the information.
Yeah, we do. And I'm proud of how brave he is for talking about this. And we're only doing this because he is comfortable doing this, obviously. If at any point he doesn't feel like he wanted to speak on something, that's okay too. And that's okay for if you're listening and you're a kid and you're like, I don't
want to talk about it.
Talk about it. Yeah. That's okay too.
Yeah.
Like it's all about what helps you heal. But it is good to find someone you can talk to. Maybe you don't want to share it on a public platform. And but
that's just a little.
It is important for kids though to make sure they do have someone to talk to. And it could be the parent, it could be the caregiver, it could be a therapist. Mm-hmm. But it is important to have that outlet for them, even with their doctors. Yeah. So that's all very important to consider in all of this. So let's just jump into it and let's get started. We're going to start off with what is Mason's diagnosis? You all know he has
Crohn's disease.
So, when we got to the hospital on June 10th of 2020, it was for a few tests to be run. For Mason, actually, the very first diagnosis he got was not Crohn's disease.
No, it wasn't.
When we first went in there, we were kind of taken by surprise because 2 days after we got there, they said he has a dilated aortic root. And
very scary.
Yeah.
It's
so
very bad.
The way they explained it to us is, everything else that was going on with the heart was basically his heart could explode at any time, like an aneurysm. If it got to beating too fast, if his blood pressure got too high, if he got too stressed, even so far as they said he wouldn't be able to, they didn't want him running, these are all things they're talking about in the future. Obviously in the hospital, he wasn't.
No, I couldn't really run around with an IV in my arm.
No, but it was definitely horrifying.
It was very scary.
And he had always had a great heart. At his well check the year before, we were told, hey, his heart is strong and no issues. So it was like, what is going on? And so it was very devastating because they told us it was irreversible. There was no cure, and they really didn't want to operate on something like that unless it came to that. And so they also said the walls of your heart were thinner. Then that's what they were and then they wanted to do genetic testing and all this stuff. And it was pretty overwhelming 2 days in. Yeah. And that was right around the time too, he was getting blood transfusions because he was,
anemic.
And he needed blood transfusions. So we went from thinking, we had a normal situation to
Just
completely
crashing.
yeah, exactly, crushing very quickly. And the reason this is important is because we had him on, he had to go on beta blockers, that we lived like this for 5 months thinking he had this heart problem. We took him in to have another ultrasound done on the heart, have like EKG and have an echocardiogram, all that. And when they looked, they were like,
it's not there.
It's not there.
It's fine.
Yeah. And we were like,
what?
Okay, is this like,
is this a joke?
What happened?
Yeah.
We,
because it's irreversible.
Right. Yeah. And so we were elated, of course, but so many questions, and so my thought was it could have had something to do with the Crohn's disease because of inflammation. I'm not a doctor. No one ever had the answers. No, but I think it's important to mention because if any of you get something like this, some kind of a diagnosis along with Crohn's disease, definitely worth following up with a cardiologist as quickly as possible. So 7 days after that diagnosis came the diagnosis of Crohn's disease. Yeah. And we wrote a lot of this down. So you're going to see us again. If you're watching us, we're looking down, trying to get everything right here. Yeah. So this also is, it's not the same for everybody. So if you're listening and saying, well, I have Crohn's disease and I didn't have that and I didn't have this, that's why this disease is so crazy.
Because it's different for everyone.
It is. It is. So you might have the same similarities, may have something totally different, but this is Mason's experience. So I just want to make that very clear that this is his. So what it was, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease of both the small and large intestine. And also pancreatitis. So his entire colon was inflamed as well.
And I actually found out I had low bone density, which is scary because that means your bones could break easier than they should.
Right. And there's concerns with growth too, because you were 11 years old at the time. And
you should be growing at that time.
They also found a spot on the spine when they did one of the MRIs, and that was concerning. There's other diseases that could encompass, but they just kept an eye on it. But that kind of went along with the joint pain and the arthritis. So it was diagnosed as peripheral arthritis for him. He also had failure to grow because of
the Crohn's disease and the biologics.
No, that would have been later with the steroids. The steroids kind of, that was a little bit later. But as far as your diagnosis, it was, and this is something common for kids. This is a failure to grow because you are malnourished because your intestines aren't behaving correctly. So even if you're eating and
you're eating everything you can, you're still not going to grow probably.
Right. So it also showed up as anemia in him, and then hepatomegaly, which is a fatty enlarged liver. So that was kind of scary as well. Like, what?
What is that?
They can feel it. And that's literally, they can kind of push and they can feel what that is. So that was the official diagnosis, which is a lot. It's important to mention the disease is progressive.
Yeah.
So that just means that it doesn't get better.
It can also change what it infests too.
For Mason, where they found it in his, and this is just so we know what their findings, what they're looking for. It's like inflammation, ulcers, and like polyps. Yeah. So and
inflammation is a big part.
Really bad.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I see that. Thank you. I'm just gonna walk out of the room.
Mason, when they try to show him the pictures,
I'm out
of what it looked like inside, he was like, nope. And Dr. B's like, you don't want to see? He's like,
do you think I want to see that?
No. But that's kind of what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And so those manifestations were found in his esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, duodenum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. So
that's a list and a half.
So he was affected pretty much everywhere. So that's again why treatments
are very important
for him. Were extremely important to jump on that to keep it from progressing, causing more permanent damage for him. So that's kind of what his diagnosis was. And what happens next is with this diagnosis, and for a lot of kids and adults, I think that there's like a whole bunch of like level of fears unlocked.
Yeah.
So you have
200 more fears unlocked.
Yeah, there's so many questions. There's like treatment options being thrown at you, and just wrapping your mind around the fact that, oh, okay, there's this
There's another
disease.
thing.
Yeah. So for Mason, so from the patient standpoint, and he wrote down, we have a few of these, so he
Yeah.
didn't forget. You can kind of discuss why some of these were fears for you.
So one of the biggest fears I had in the hospitals, the doctor told me Crohn's, you're gonna have it forever. And I was like, okay, but what does remission mean? Remission means you're still getting treatments, but you're feeling better.
Mhm.
And
You're not symptomatic.
yeah,
But
so
the disease is still there.
the disease is still there,
Mhm.
but you have to get treatments for the rest of your life, which sounded like the end of the world. And
Well, I mean, at the time, yeah,
yeah,
because
because I was scared of shots. I did not like
yeah,
them.
that was the other fear. You
Yeah.
had a fear of injections and IVs. I mean, kind of who
And
doesn't? I mean,
and the treatments also do have side effects too.
mhm.
So yeah,
Which we kind of mentioned the last one, like when you watch the
headaches,
commercials
yeah.
and you're like, wow, it almost sounds like the cure
It's not helping.
is worse than
But
the
it
disease.
does.
But I mean, that's they have to give you those side effects. So that is scary. But this is important to say, talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
I sound like the commercial, but
Talk to your doctor.
And they can address those concerns. And you don't want to make a decision because you're paralyzed by fear or by something you saw and panic and use that emotion. You need to have it grounded in science and talking to a doctor who can help guide you to make the best decision for your
child
or
or you.
for you. And so yeah, so that's just something. So yeah, it might be a fear, but
Yeah.
definitely talk to a doctor and get help with that. Don't just
Don't do
just
this.
not
Yeah.
act and panic. So
I was scared of treatments, I was scared of injections, and I was also scared of being immunocompromised because you can't really go anywhere. You have to be very careful. You can go places, but you just have to be careful.
right.
So it just changes a lot of things I used to do before. Like it changes a lot. And then I was also scared of tests and procedures, which those are not fun no matter what they
because
are.
it's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's not just done at diagnosis. You've had 3 sets of
Yeah.
scopes in less than 3 years. And
yeah, and that's out of the hospital.
right. And
Yeah.
he'll have to have them again because
Yay!
yeah, I
love
know.
knowing this. Nah, that's fine.
I wish it wasn't that way, but I mean, but again, it's a daunting thing. It's a
Yeah.
fear of thinking this is all the time, I know that's
Yeah. I mean, you got to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I was also scared of flares because, and I when I was in the hospital, I was thinking, if I get out of this flare, what's going to stop me from going into another flare? Because
Right.
like the treatments will help, but that doesn't make it exactly like it doesn't protect you exactly. And
Right.
you can have like little flares and stuff, but I was afraid of big flares. Like
Right.
I don't want to go back to the hospital.
Because they had mentioned, because he was in the hospital for we've said this, almost 2 months.
Yeah.
That's a very long time.
Very long.
And so when we left, he was like, I never want to come back. Like, and the nurse
said, "Oh, you'll probably be back again."
Yeah, they're like, we see you guys, you have to, and Mason's like,
Wait.
no. So there's that fear of flaring, and then that would also mean your treatment, the medication,
yeah, the treatment isn't
working. So that's a whole
yeah, because then you have to change treatments, you have to do all this stuff, and so that's another fear on its own.
Right.
I was also afraid of surgery because that's another choice if treatments don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do that.
And like we mentioned, the surgery isn't a cure. So
yeah, it's not a cure.
It would depend what it's being done for. There's many types. There's ostomies, there are strictures, there's resectioning. There's, I could go on. And there's different ways that they can help with one thing because it's necessary for your body to be healthy to process things. So sometimes surgery is necessary.
Because it sounds really scary when you think about it.
Depending on what it is, it might be something that really does make you feel better and is great for the long run. So, yeah.
And the last fear I'm going to mention is doctors. Now, why would you be afraid of doctors? Well, I'm not really afraid of them, but I was nervous about what doctor I would get. And that's where I got lucky. I got to choose the doctor I wanted, and the doctor I chose was really good. But I was afraid, like, depending on the doctor I got, I would be having surgery, or maybe I'd be on different
right, because there's no, like we we're just saying, there's no necessarily one way to treat this. So one doctor, and that's where second and third opinions really are valuable, because if there's something that one doctor is saying, you know, or even if like I've heard of things in the groups I belong to that are just like, I'm telling these people, please go get another opinion. And your health is number one. You are number one. So if you feel that it's not being addressed as seriously as it should,
get a second or third opinion,
and maybe switch doctors. But for Mason, it was scary because he just didn't know what to expect. What this doctor, you know,
because there were so many different doctors that would come in, and they're like, who's going to get chosen? Yeah, they were all good, but
he would have like in the mornings, when they did the rounds, he would have like, there were so many people, they couldn't all fit in his room. It was like, sometimes there was like,
I had a big room.
Yeah, and he had a double room, but at the time he was the only one in it
because it was 2020.
Yeah. And so the room would fill up, and Mason being the center of it all in his bed, you know, and
there's doctors surrounding you, there's nurses surrounding you.
It's intimidating. Yeah. And he just took it in stride. And I think that's really important, to feel comfortable and take charge of your health by listening and understanding your options. And I'm really proud again of him, how he handled that, because it was intimidating as a caregiver, a parent.
I'm the center of the show.
Yeah, but he handled it really well. And so, like, now to switch over to like the caregiver fears, you know, parent fears, like what comes into play. For me, the first one was his well-being. You know, I didn't like seeing him in pain. I didn't like seeing him stressed.
It's hard for the people that love you to see that, to see you in pain, which you can't control it, but it's because they don't want to see you in pain. It's just very hard.
It is
to see that stuff happening,
and you kind of just feel like powerless. And so
because it's not like you can say, Crohn's, stop hurting him.
Right.
You can't say that.
Right. So that was my fear, was like, how do I help him and not see this stress like take over? And for kids, there's something called like child life specialists, and this is at pediatric hospitals. I think they should have these at adult care as well. Honestly, they're phenomenal. So they come in and they're the ones that aren't going to do anything. So they're never going to come with a shot. They're nothing that's going to hurt you.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
They help.
Right. So they're the ones who come in, and they're trained to help get kids, like, get your mind onto something else. And while this procedure is being done, or while they'll talk you through and talk about other things, they are fantastic. So I encourage you to reach out to a child life specialist and ask for one.
They're really good at help.
Maybe before placing an IV or an injection, or even on the way to a procedure. They'll walk down, they'll stay with your child where you can't. They can go back with them and hang out with them. So that made me feel a lot better, because I wanted him to learn how to cope and feel more empowered. And so my fear was him feeling like a loss of control and just, spiraling. And also, I think from my perspective, it was just accepting his diagnosis, because at first it's pretty unbelievable. And you're like, no way, this is my healthy kid, this
is happening to my son.
Yeah. And like, and how is there not a cure?
Yeah.
And what do you mean? So there's a level of acceptance you have to get to, and you also kind of have to go through grief. I think other people have mentioned this with other chronic illnesses, and it's strange because you're grieving, like, I guess, the life you thought you had, and you're kind of leaving that behind and accepting that that's no longer the plan.
This is the plan now. We
have a new journey. And so you kind of grieve that old journey, and you kind of have to do that, I think, to start to accept the new one and move forward. So I think that's an important part of the process, and having those feelings and emotions are important. So that was kind of my other fear, was just like, this is incurable. and what can I do to help him? And we'll get to that later, because that's really important in the healing process as well. Also, what was scary to me, and I know other parents have voiced this, is that I couldn't see all the signs. What is scary is to think I might miss these symptoms, and if he's going to start to flare, I want to be on top of it.
You want to know.
So my
because you don't want to let it get worse, because then you can go into the hospital and have all these issues.
Right. If it does get worse, it really can go fast. And so I was like, okay, I remember being just extremely like hyper vigilant on watching for signs, because I just was afraid I would miss it. And I didn't want to miss it. So there's things you don't have to go overboard. There's things you could do every day to kind of put your mind at ease and keep also your child aware, and adults can do this too. So we started kind of monitoring, we'd monitor his weight, food intake,
that's very important.
restroom.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it was all important, and we would document things because you forget over time. Like it's easy. So I don't want to forget anything. So I wanted to make a show to the doctor and say, here, take a look at this. Here's how he's doing. And so that was kind of how I eased that fear, was by monitoring, and slowly time helps too. You start to feel more confident, I think. And just the unknown was a giant fear. Like,
not knowing like what's going to happen is very scary.
Right. It's not like anyone could say, well, in a week he's going to feel like this, or in 2. It's just like
you don't know. You have to go along with it.
Everyone has hopes that it's the best case scenario. Like, that's fantastic. That's what they want. But we still don't. There's it's not predictable. And so that really threw me. That for him, I'm going, what's his future
going to be like?
And what about work, and all these things. So it's like this, like I said, whole level of fears are unlocked. And you're as a parent, I mean, I think every parent has like normal concerns. So yes, I mean, those are some of probably, we were trying to think of more common ones that we probably shared with other people. So hopefully, we didn't get to all of everything on that, but just kind of touched upon some that you might relate to and might understand yourselves as well. And the diagnosis really was life-changing.
Yeah.
And I mean,
one moment you didn't know what you had, the next moment you have Crohn's.
And it's
for the rest of your life.
Right. And like, so we'll go from the patient side again, some of those life changes, like, especially for a kid, because I think people are curious, like what it's like, and it's going to vary because every kid does different things.
Yeah.
So I'll let you
So the first one, because I'm on 2 biologics, I go to the hospital every 2 weeks.
Because you might be thinking that's not how
that's not how mine is.
But for us, it's every 2 weeks, and that's between infusion and injection. So and that's hard, I think.
Yeah, it's a long day. You have to drive down, you have to wait, you have to get the shot, you have to come back home.
And then sometimes some people get worse side effects from them. So some people,
I get like a little headache, and that's usually all. But for other people, they can get other things.
Some people, they say get they're fatigued for days.
That isn't fun.
But for Mason, we also pre-med, so we can talk about that more in a biologic discussion. We'll take that, but that's something else we do to give him the best chance of feeling well after these treatments. And it wasn't even, you had to go a lot more than every 2 weeks. So that's just for those treatments.
For the treatments, it's every 2 weeks.
There's all the other appointments. So he had, for him, it was like,
it was like almost like 3 times or more a week.
It was
5, 7 every day.
Yeah, so many tests and specialists and close monitoring. So it still is where we're at 3 years later. We're still at the hospital every 2 weeks. It's a long time, but you adjust. That's something you do get used to. But at first, that was definitely life-changing.
The hard part, And the next one is school. Now, I'm lucky because before I found out I had Crohn's, I was homeschooled, which is good because I'm still homeschooled. Right. But it's nice because I can go to the bathroom if I need. we do my schedule.
Right. So basically the same things you might do at school, but on your own schedule that works for you.
Because if you're like at the school and you have Crohn's, like maybe you can't go to the bathroom exactly when you need.
It's distracting.
Some of the food at schools aren't the best for Crohn's disease.
Some people have trigger foods, and something, you might have to be very careful. And so there's
and sometimes you may not be comfortable.
Yes.
And you might not be having a good day.
Mason was sometimes he couldn't sit up.
Yeah. I'd be sitting on the couch and it'd still be a little annoying.
So we were fortunate enough to be able to accommodate that, and he was able to stay on track, and he's a year ahead. So which is fantastic. A lot of kids, it can be quite devastating because their school can take quite a hit with the hospitalizations, the appointments.
Because sometimes for some appointments, like I said, it can take almost a whole day.
Right.
And then you missed a whole day of school. Then you have to catch up. And then the next day of school is kind of messed up. Then you just have
sick days because and if you're immunocompromised, that's a whole another set of problems. That's why also for us, homeschool was
very good, because you might go to school, you might get sick more often. And we'll
cover this more because this is actually a really important topic. And so there's IEPs and 504 plans you can do to accommodate for your child and advocate for them and schools. We're going to make that into another episode because that is a really important topic to discuss, and hopefully bring on some guests that can share their personal experiences with you guys. So we will not forget about that. We will go further with that.
Yeah. The next is side effects. And these are caused by different medications, which include like pills or the treatments.
Right. Like when you're taking, like Mason was on prednisone and methotrexate.
Yeah. It gave me bigger cheeks.
Yeah. So
moon face, that's what it's called.
Which is tough for some kids and adults too. So the way your appearance changes, and you can get stretch marks too, because you gain weight so quickly in certain areas, you develop stretch marks.
Yeah.
And it's tough. And people don't always know looking at you, and these kids don't have to explain to everybody like this is what's going on, but it's and
with prednisone and methotrexate, I lost a little bit of hair too.
Your hair was falling out. And so in the hospital when they started methotrexate, I don't know if that's, he's also had the malnutrition from Crohn's, but it was around the same time he started that his hair would fall out in clumps. And so we would find it on the pillow, and it was like, oh, okay.
And then my hair actually changed colors.
It did. It changed colors and textures when you start the biologics. So, and so I think that whatever kind of scary.
Yeah, crazy. What's with the hair?
But and I think people who've been through chemotherapy have experienced this as well. So it kind of changes things from the inside. So so his hair it went from a blonder to a darker color. Like there's a line. It was immediate. It wasn't
like you could actually see it. Like it wasn't like a little fade. You could see just a line.
Yeah.
Like you could see it.
Yeah. And then it was like it started to get much thicker. And So anyways, that was interesting, but that was great because we were thrilled that because some people experience hair loss for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for them. And so that can be also hard for kids and adults.
I was on for prednisone for about a year almost.
Probably a year and a half. Yeah. So they considered you dependent on it. So you have to wean off of it. And that takes quite a while too. Yeah. So that's a whole nother discussion. We have a lot of fun things to discuss.
Are you excited for next episode?
I know, we keep telling you all these exciting things we're going to talk about in the future.
This and this and this and this.
So, yay, stay tuned.
Yeah.
And so vacations.
Oh yeah, I can't go on vacations. Almost every summer we go on a little vacation for about 2 weeks.
You say little.
A little.
They were big trips.
Yeah, it's actually a big vacation.
I love
and we'd actually learn a little bit while we're on them. Oregon Trail, all that stuff.
We would take whatever he was learning about at the time, and we would turn it into like an adventure, and we would visit all those places like living history,
like Yellowstone.
Yeah, we got national park. He would get his junior ranger badges. We love national parks.
They're really fun.
I miss it, and it's not that the hard part is getting their places to stay
Yeah.
and making sure Mason's well enough. We only have a certain amount of time in between appointments, so we
Yeah.
can't do any big trips. And a lot of people travel with this. So
Or you just do a shorter
it
trip.
just, again, it looks different for
A lot of things.
everything.
Yeah.
So for us, vacations are tough. And that's something that we definitely will get back to
Yeah.
and enjoy.
Hopefully soon.
Mhm, but that was definitely hard to adjust to.
And the next one was getting a therapist,
Mhm.
which the therapist we have is very good.
Yeah.
Best therapist.
And so that's something like what Mason said. He
Yeah.
likes her and he's like, she's great.
Yeah,
He
she's a good therapist.
He had other psychologists, psychiatrists,
Yeah.
in the
Sometimes,
hospital.
Yeah.
And he was like,
They feel like they're too straightforward almost. Like
kind
they're
of impersonal.
too
You call them
busy.
robots.
Yeah, robots.
Everybody was watching.
Sorry.
You know, it's so I know. I guess the takeaway from that for me is that sometimes I hear parents like, oh, my child does not want to talk to a therapist, or they talked to one, it didn't go anywhere. I think that means you don't have the right therapist.
Find a therapist that works for you.
Because we really had to convince Mason. We're like, no, a therapy is good. We need to do this. And he was kind of like, no, why? You know, like, just trust us. So we found our therapist, and she's fantastic. And he talks to her, you know, just like you would, I think, a family member.
Yeah,
you're very
she
open
treats
with
us
her.
like a family member.
Yeah, so Mason feels like he can talk to her about anything. And I think that's important
It's very important.
Even a caregiving standpoint. It helps us to know that there's somebody else. Like if maybe he felt comfortable saying something to somebody else for some reason, we've got all those bases covered. So we know that he's being looked after for his mental health as well. So that's very important. So if your child doesn't want to go, or you're an adult who's like, I don't like it, I would say talk to your doctor, consider it, and
consider a therapist,
and like interview them. Don't like, if you meet up with one, like, don't think they're all like that. You know, there's different personalities, and find one that you're comfortable with. Yeah. The next, and so mine, so for me as a caregiver, I guess it's my turn now.
It's your turn. I passed you the mic.
Yeah. How it changed my life as a parent is that, you know, I had thought we had like a pretty normal, happy life, you know, no real serious concerns.
No.
And then to have this like cloud that suddenly felt like it was like looming over us, it was
very hard.
Yeah, very difficult. And I also, like kind of mentioned before, I didn't want to see Mason frustrated and kind of give up or think that life is, you know, it's like I knew it could still be wonderful. And
you have to find the bright side of everything, the bright side of Crohn's disease.
Yeah, while also still acknowledging you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, and that's okay. And never making him feel like he couldn't come to us and just, you know, hey, today is, you know, I'm upset about this.
Roller coasters, because diseases are like roller coasters. And we occasionally have loops, we have flat parts, and we have hills.
Yeah.
And whoop-de-doops.
Yeah, and you don't know what's coming. Yeah. So that kind of adventure, that kind of frustration, and that was a little difficult at first. And also from a caregiving standpoint, parent is insurance fights. And if that's fun. Yeah, I'm sure you're listening and all of you are like, yes, oh my gosh, I know all of you have experienced this. I don't think there's a single one of you who has not had to fight for just what you need to survive. And it shouldn't be like that. And that's something we're very passionate about, why we speak out too, because we want to bring awareness to this. And I've learned a lot, and it's unfortunately usually learned when you're in the middle of something bad. So when you're denied a treatment, or you're, you know, denied,
if you don't have that treatment, you might go into a flare.
You're denied a medication, whatever it might be. It usually feels crucial at that time. It doesn't just happen and you're like, well, I have months, so we can fight this. It's like, you have no choice. Yeah. So that's really something that we'll talk about in another episode, because I think that's important to cover. We want to help other parents and help other caregivers with whatever knowledge we've learned. It's important to share that with each other so we can help each other out.
Yeah.
And also the scheduling of all the appointments. We have a schedule book.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I know they have apps for it, but we have like an old school
But
scheduling book, so all of us can see it. It's something that sits out by our table. We have all of our appointments scheduled in there, and we also have my chart, which is great. A lot of hospitals have that, and so that's organized online, so you really don't miss appointments. We have a good system. Our hospital has a good system, but just scheduling all of them is difficult.
yeah,
And that kind of leads into with work, and work is really tough to figure out, and I don't have a lot of answers for that. I know for me, I'm self-employed. I run my own business, and it was still a challenge, because just because I'm home running a business doesn't mean I'm like doing nothing, So, and my husband is employed with a corporation, he goes to work every day. And so it kind of left it on me. And usually I think it does fall more on one parent, unless both of you can, work it out. But
stay home somehow.
yeah. So luckily in our situation, and my husband's extremely helpful. He takes off, your dad's so good.
Wednesday and
Well, he has his days off. That's when we try to schedule appointments. And he also will call in to help whenever, if I need to go to an appointment, we try to balance it. So, but it's tough. It is. I don't think a lot of people realize, you only have a certain amount of vacation time, sick days.
It's not like you can be like, I need to take this week off because he's not feeling good.
Right.
You only have a certain amount.
Right. And
so work can just help.
We're going to discuss that, because there's things like FMLA and things that we did. We can discuss more in another episode to help parents also kind of navigate that. But it's tough no matter what. It's very hard.
Yeah.
And then for Mason, we'd like to monitor with his
activities.
Yeah, it sounds like he's being watched.
Yeah.
But we try to do as normal as possible. So kind of like we mentioned before, he takes a lot of his own control of this as well. So it's not like us having to constantly say, Mason, how are you feeling? Mason, what did so we monitor things like he does his weight. We have supplemental drinks, how many of those he drinks a day. We also have a journal that he keeps in the restroom to document
how many times I
go. And if there's any abnormalities, it's written
anomalies.
down. And we also used to do a food log. Luckily for him, we did this to find triggers, but he does really well. These biologics for him, he really doesn't have any triggers. Yeah. So, but for a long time, we had a food log, and every meal, every drink, every single thing that went in was written down. So that way, if he was had a reaction, we could
look back and be like, this is what caused it.
So yeah, and that was really helpful for us. But that is also something else that changes, because you really have to monitor these things before that you were not necessarily as concerned with, but now it is a concern.
Yeah.
And I think something that's very normal for parents, and I see this and I think they feel bad for it, is, I don't want to say it's envy, but it's you're happy for seeing other families do normal things, like go on vacations or just do normal stuff. But there's that sense where it's like, I'll see other parents say, I'm just having a bad day. I saw a bunch of pictures posted of friends doing, they're at Disneyland or they're wherever they're at. And
you look at it and you're like, oh, I'm happy that they're doing this good.
Right.
But then you think, why can't it be me?
Yeah. And there's a frustration there, because it's not like, this is not something where you have like a 2-year treatment, a 3-year treatment, a 1 year. There's no, it's just ongoing. And you
going.
Right. So you just really embrace, if you're feeling good and you do stuff, embrace it. And, just try to live your life, because you never know when things can take a turn again. And so we just, we're a little different situation than being immunosuppressed, but we try to enjoy every minute and celebrate all of the little joys, all of the happy moments, and try and just know, like, we are, so it's a weird feeling, I think, for parents, conflicting, where you're happy for others, but you feel kind of like forgotten, like you're not part of that world anymore. So it's a hard thing.
It is.
And you also there's also, which again, it's kind of difficult, because you watch other kids heal who have other, chronic illnesses. And there's some you also see that are never going to heal. And so it's difficult. You feel for those kids that their lives are forever changed. And it's like, you can wish it is so different for them, and you wish they're like the other kids who, become cured or can move on from chronic illness. And, but what we found is, instead of focusing on like wishing that could happen, is, like with Mason, we figured out like you heal through helping others. We found other ways to kind of help that feeling of wanting all kids to have a fantastic childhood. You want all kids to have a healthy, happy, normal childhood. So we're really big on speaking out and doing this too, and raising awareness for kids and
Crohn's.
Kids with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or really any chronic illness. So it's just something very close to our hearts.
Yeah.
And
we want to help.
Yeah, you see a lot of these kids in the hospitals, and you're just like, wow, you guys are warriors. You're amazing. And the caregivers are too, that are right next to them.
Because I remember when we first went to the hospital, we were walking in, and I remember I was walking to our room, and there was just so many people, kids in the bed.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, I never knew this is what happens in here. And it's scary. It's sad because
well, it was all new to us at the time, and now we're getting more used to seeing
now we're getting more used to it.
Unfortunately, it's like but I think it's given us another set of eyes to see this world with, and to realize like, how can we help others, and let other kids be seen and be heard, and give them these voices. And so hopefully that's kind of what this podcast will do too. It's not just about Crohn's disease. And so that's hard. You want to like save everybody. I think you
save them.
Yeah, it's it can be really tough.
You don't want anyone to be in pain.
No. So that's kind of you see some kids that get better, and that's awesome. And then you see the other ones that are suffering kind of, and so,
like I want to help. I want to help somehow.
So
that's what we're doing.
That's exactly why we're doing. We have other plans too, in the future, to hopefully also empower kids, because I think like for Mason, finding ways to give him back control over something so uncontrollable was really important. And I think, he's been involved in so many different aspects of, and he's been welcomed into a lot of businesses, corporate, it's been a really cool experience for him to feel like he can see hope for the future, and he can see, potential for other treatments that are being worked on. And
that's really cool part. You can see treatments being made. It's history.
Right.
It's history being made.
It is. And hopefully within, it'll definitely be within your time, and hopefully within a lot of the adults and stuff listening, because it's hard for them in so many other ways. And that's like another discussion too, but you're all doing a great job. And you need to find what makes you tick, like what is your passion, and get involved. I really encourage, I know caregiving is difficult. I mean, you already have work, it's
full-time job,
but I think that there is something in it where you get onto the other side of it, and it really is healing. So I think that's important.
I think it is. It's important.
So that kind of wraps up today's
video
episode
video.
Well, some are listening, some are watching. So if you are watching and you're on YouTube,
I recommend you like and subscribe.
Yes, so like and subscribe would be great.
It will help with awareness.
Give us and we're enjoying. A couple of you have left some comments and messaged us.
If you have a comment,
please keep it up. Yes. And unless there's someone who's not really nice, just message me. Don't leave a comment. We don't need harassment. So try to bring some positivity, guys. Let's keep it positive. So but feel free to put any questions or any recommendation for something you'd like us to speak about. And we, part of this, actually, I want to mention support groups really quick. Those are super important too for caregivers and patients. There's a lot online, like on Facebook, there's some great support groups, and, reach out to them as well. For, they're sometimes you may not feel like you want to talk to a therapist yet, or, but their support groups are great for other people who understand and who can be encouraging as well. It can be a little scary too. Not gonna lie, some of the stuff you read about, but it's all part of the bigger picture and learning about this disease and helping others and helping them with their fears. So, yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, and we will be back with our next episode and can't wait to see you guys again.
Yeah. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to apply something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.